motion to call the meeting to order.
Seconded?
And public, I don't see anybody. So we're good there.
I thought a couple people would actually show up. Maybe they'll come.
And do we have minutes?
Yep. I looked them over.
There should be some in there.
Should be some in there that they can sign. Yep. This here.
This the other thing?
Yep.
Yep. Motion to approve the minutes?
Second. Signing, where is it? The right one?
Did she?
That's all she has there, and she has.
And we do have to use that too. We have to sign in on that too. This is the one that he signed. Sign our lives.
Sorry,
It's okay.
not your next.
Yeah. Michelle got word that her grandmother died at 10 o'clock this morning, so she.
Like 9:15,
Yeah.
so she had to leave.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know, because I saw her early this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She dealt with our friend,
Yeah, with
the toe shoes.
Toe shoes. There's no spot for it? You could just sign and
Just
date
sign the
on the
bottom?
bottom.
Okay.
Sign and
There's
date.
usually a little empty line for us with
Yeah.
our names
But
under it.
this is the one she put to be signed.
Okay. Thanks. First.
And does this, where it says here, the meeting was called to order at what time by who, seconded by?
Yeah, she normally just records.
Yeah,
She
she
just-
records everything.
Yep, so it was called by me at
5 o'clock?
5 o'clock. Thomas Minster.
Yeah, she just takes notes as to what transpires. And we do have to do the sign-in sheet too. That's under there. Yeah.
Mayor speak, I guess?
I guess she's number 3.
Okay.
All right. So as I said I would, what's before you now is a schedule of documents ready, necessary for closing, and then the language that would be used at closing that kind of walks through what Williston will be taking care of, and also rights preserved by the city and interest in mostly infrastructure, being able to access that you will see in, I didn't realize it was going to print on both sides of the paper, so it's not super clear.
Saving the tree. Saving a tree.
Sitting in the chair. Well,
Saving a tree.
there you go. Okay. Settlement terms, it's like in section 1, right before section 2 recitals, kind of towards the end of what would be 1, 2, 3 on the 4th
Settlement
page,
terms. Yep.
the way it printed out.
Yep.
So Williston has taken maintenance, improvement, upgrade of the utilities now owned by the city. We retain rights to access as needed. And it's on Williston for expense. And it also, it's not that Williston gets a free-for-all, it's that they're following local, state, and federal laws. Similar, and Joe, please, correct me if I'm speaking wrong, similar to the Main Street project where Williston improves some sewer that also, was it Williston or Park Street? They worked with the city and they did the work, and we made sure that it was beneficial, but also it was to spec.
Main Street.
Yeah,
Yeah, Main Street, the paving and all.
Yeah. So that's the kind of right to that. And how we walk through the appraisals for Park and Brewster met both the city attorney's requirements as well as Williston's. I would say the planning board is approved under MGL and our charter that the transfer could happen. I would say the one bone of contention at city council, and I wasn't at that the whole planning board, but it was the same around traffic and making the argument, police and DPW and fire, that they were in support of the project because of safety, public safety vehicles or whatnot, not really using that road, and the cost of plowing the road and maintaining the road was much more than the loss in Chapter 90 money that we would get. So, but there were residents and concerns from the public that it still was going to have a secondary effect on those who use the road.
And you're talking about Brewster?
Brewster.
Oh,
yeah.
okay, I thought you said Brewster.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, on Brewster. I mean, that was a concern. I would say that was the biggest.
That was my concern.
Yeah.
Which is why I didn't want anything approved until you guys you went to city council, talked to them, and then talked to, figured out the particulars, which you've done. But I also thought it would public should know. Like, just.
And there was public speak.
But did they even know this is happening?
I mean, it was at planning and at city council. And it's been certainly on Facebook.
Yeah, I knew about it from
Yeah.
the city council meeting before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody in town doesn't go to city council.
No.
meetings.
Right, but yeah, we.
That was my concern, to make sure that people know, people that use it, that they're not,
Yeah.
so that
Well,
they're
It's not
aware.
going to be close to public thoroughfare, is it?
Yes, and it has to be well marked. I mean, there's a plan. I mean, Williston needs to make provision. I think initially, they're not, until they start the dorm construction, it stays open and they start putting up signs, and then it's kind of eased out of public.
So the public won't be able to use it eventually, per
Yeah.
se.
Right.
Yeah.
That was my concern for
Yeah.
the public that use it all the time. I'm sure
Yeah.
there are people that cut through using that and stuff like that. That was my only
Yeah.
concern, that
I mean,
people
the
that
road
are
was-
using it know it.
Yeah, and
That
the
they
road.
won't be able to.
Yeah, and the road was closed for a month, and there wasn't, police and fire pulled their records to see if it impeded emergency calls or if there was accidents and whatnot, and they weren't. But yeah, I mean, Joe, I'm sorry, I interrupted about the closing of it.
No, Jeff Tannett was in the other day and was saying that they have plans in place to start that new building, and as they start that new building and start to have construction vehicles come in there, they'll be putting up signage to keep the traffic out of there while they work, and then when the building is complete, then they'll finally close it all the way so that even construction vehicles, because they won't be needing the construction vehicles.
Okay.
And Williston owns there was some question if Williston owned all the property that abuts Brewster, and they
On both
did.
sides, right.
Yeah, and Tanner, our attorney, went all the way back. And I would want the board to say, to know, I don't want you to say, but to know that because I can't read a calendar, and no other reason, we pushed closing off until after this meeting. So I actually ended up doing that twice, just because I messed up the calendar, you guys didn't. But I promised that this wouldn't happen until I came back. And so we don't close until the 23rd now, which is, still fine time-wise, but, the only reason why it was put off is I promised you guys I'd come back. With the paperwork and, I'm trying to think of another. Traffic definitely was a concern. And then on the Park Street parcel, just the switch of, some conversation about the fill and the grading and who is going to do that, or extra expense to us. Williston will have some fill from the work they're doing on the solar field, so they're going to, I don't know, not use it. I didn't know you had to buy fill. That was something I learned, and it's expensive.
It's very expensive.
Yeah, I did not know that. I was like, why are we paying for dirt? Well, I
Because it's clean dirt.
Because you don't have it.
Right.
Because you don't have it, and what makes it even more expensive is the trucking.
Yeah, right. So I roll wow. So that helps the cost anyways, but just there were some questions around that and how it was structured and what the worth of the land was, and some concern that if with the roundabout it gives Williston more frontage, and if they wanted to down the road they could actually make 2 building lots there instead of just one, because the roundabout is a circle that goes into like their land and gives them the extra, I don't know, 100 feet or 75 feet. Yeah. I don't know who caught that. Was it JP? It was good. It was, it was a great point. So there was some concern about how, dedicated they are to solar, and really that allowed us to leverage value. So we were what the property was evaluated at was more and more than Brewster. So it's a good switch. I do think that the first couple of years will be concerning because one, we're closing a public road, and just like practice and notice, people will get used to that. And Park Street, while I think it's going to be great for all traffic there, it will be a mess for a while. And there's a lot of dirt that need to be moved. I mean, that's not just repaving or redoing a road, and anything could go wrong. I mean, you look at Joe at 7 o'clock in the morning on a Friday screaming at a contractor, and Cottage Street kind of gave me an indication. It's like, wow, something goes wrong with that roundabout. So, and kids have to still get to school, and so because that school doesn't go out of use. I mean, the middle school stays there the whole time. So that's where we're at.
All right.
Does the board want to make a motion on that they...
Yeah. I guess I make a motion to
approve the discontinuance?
discontinuance was the word that I lost. To approve the discontinuance of Brewster Ave, subject to what we've been provided with.
Second.
All in favor? Oh,
Good. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
no,
I
thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you for following up with all that.
Yeah, no. Can I just use your pen for a second?
Sure can.
Stay cool. Try.
No, it's only 70-something, but it's
It is.
Doing the
Still have
more stuff.
algae in the pond.
The next item on the agenda, again, relates to Brewster. It's a memo from the city clerk regarding the discontinuance of Brewster Ave. The next packet, I know we talked about it in the past. We had our outfall, the sewer outfall line going to the Connecticut River failed. It's now going into the Manhan. We're meeting our permits, our discharge permits, but we've got to go through a few hoops before we can start construction. One, we don't have any money. Two, in the IWRMP, it calls out the fact that we need to look at that sewer line, that outfall line. So I think now's the time,
When you're mobilized.
when we're mobilized, instead of just fixing it, let's run a camera through there, see what else we're looking at. And so we have a 2-part proposal from Ty and Bond. It gets us started with that, and hopefully in another month we can appropriate additional money from enterprise retained earnings to fund the second half of that, so that we can continue with that. Once we know what the first half will tell us what we need to do, the second half will get us a set of specs so we can put it out to bid and say this is what we want to do. And it'll also give us an idea, or it'll give us the engineer's price as to what it's going to cost us to do that, because we don't even know what it's going to cost us to do that yet. So this is something that we're going to be dealing with for probably through the winter and early spring. for construction, but we've got to keep moving with it because DP and the regulatory agencies aren't going to like the fact that we're just, oh, well, we'll get to it. No, we've got to keep going. So,
I agree.
the next item is an order to correct, and it's related to 20 Park Street. And,
Oh, yeah.
No, I meant to try to find my home.
yeah, well, we've had a lot of discussions with her, and she was very agreeable to, she's got a lot of nice flowers, but she's very agreeable that, yeah, there's some ornamental grasses that are a little bit high, so maybe I need to take those down and so forth. So she has, and while it's different than any other section of that Park Street, because it's on the tree belt, seems to be maintaining it. Her and her neighbor did do some talking, so they're happy with what she's got going there. So this is just.
Well, I mean, you look at the pictures, and I mean,
5-foot fountain grass.
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like, you
Yeah.
can't really think that's okay.
You can't really see that's okay, because if the neighbor can't see getting out of their driveway, that's,
Right.
that is an issue. And the fact that it's on city property, that
Right.
puts us as a liability issue too, because if the neighbor pointed it out to the city, and the city didn't do anything, and there was an accident there, he said, I told the city,
Right.
and now the city's on the hook too. And I explained that to her. I said, so I don't want the city on the hook any more than you want to be on the hook. She said,
Right.
no, you're right. So
Exactly.
It was a good.
That's good.
It was a good
So
conversation.
Went well.
It went well. It went
That's
well.
good.
The next one is just a letter from the treatment plant supervisor saying that there are no exceedances during the month of June. And also, the next one is from the wastewater treatment plant supervisor informing EPA that we have a problem there with the sewer line.
With the sewer line.
And
We're not trying to hide it.
not trying to hide it, and if you do, you're gonna pay, so don't do it. The next one is and I don't quite fully understand the 50% survival rate of the LC 500 stat. He explained to me once, but I can't remember what it was, but the fact that we've met it, I'm happy.
Yeah, it's a toxicity test.
Toxicity test,
Yeah,
right.
so there's at least 50% survived the test.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
There's this man.
Worst is when you melt them and there's nothing to count.
There's nothing to count, yeah.
Had to feel like that.
That's happened, huh?
Yeah. Not here, obviously.
Yeah.
Industrial effluent a couple times, they're like, there's nothing to count.
There's nothing to count.
Wow, they're gone.
The next one is from Raymakers. They're starting. They were the low bid on the Admiral Street job,
Mhm.
and on that Admiral Street job, there's going to be some sewer line replacement, some drainage replacement, sidewalks, curbing replacement, and ultimate new blacktop. And it falls under a grant that was received from the planning department. And the planning department is really good at that, because the grant that they received, I don't know if I told you this before, can only be received in certain sections of the city because of low income, or I should say, not affordable, because of their income status and a few other things. So they have to go out and canvass the neighborhood and get this information and report it back. So this is phase 2 of that phase 3. So next year they'll be applying for phase 3, and hopefully we can do another section down there, which is good because those sections of the city with those small streets in our limited funds for road repair, it's not even on the list.
Right,
It's
yeah.
not something that we would see,
Right.
you know.
Mhm.
So they started that work, and they're going to continue till it's done.
Good.
The next one is just a letter from MassDOT telling us we got our allotment of Chapter 90 this year. And they're, okay, we knew it was coming. The next item is a special permit application for 4749 Cottage Street. Now, that's the gas station up here
That's what I was thinking.
and the package store next to it. They're going to be doing some work there. Now, this was discussed a couple of years ago, but it just seemed to have, stalled a little bit. Well, it's come back. But we want to remind them that if you want to go back out into that new road for water and sewer, you're going to have to mill and pave a section just like we made Williston do on Main Street.
Can't cut a trench.
You can't just cut a trench and patch it because
Right now.
for 5 years you can't do that. And also this requires them to put a sidewalk in to connect from Adam Street down to this
One over here.
this one right here. And again, they're gonna have to cut a little bit of the road to get that in and do that. So, yeah, that means that whole area would have to be milled and repaved. So, but I don't have a timeline on this. Nobody else seems to have a timeline on it for us. So,
Yeah, that's gonna cost them.
it's gonna cost them. The next one is just a letter that we sent to the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development for a MassWorks grant for road improvements for River Valley, and that would include Lyman Street coming down.
Yeah, but we're gonna.
To make that
Yeah, we
into
talked
the,
about
yeah.
that,
Yeah. So, we'll have to wait and see back as to where we are with that. But other than that, I don't have anything else.
Neither do I. Tom?
No, I think we're good. Telecom's going well. The public meeting got pushed from tonight to September 11th, just for more public involvement.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot of
Get rid
of the summer.
advertising and
Yeah.
interest. So.
Motion to adjourn?
Seconded.
Does anybody need to sign approval of July 12th?